I want to ask you something and I want you to answer it honestly, not out loud, but just to yourself. How are you actually doing? Not fine, not the answer you give when someone asks in passing, not the version that you post about, not the face you put up for your family. How are you actually doing? Because here is what I know: the pre-internship period, that gap between graduation and internship, is one of the most psychologically difficult periods in a medical professional's life. And almost nobody talks about it that way. People talk about it as an inconvenience, a delay, a logistical problem to solve. But for many graduates living inside it, it is so much heavier than that. Talk about the anxiety that doesn't switch off, the guilt of not working when you feel like you should be, the loss of structure and purpose that training gave you, the isolation of being in between, not a student anymore, not yet a professional, the quiet fear that you're falling behind, that you're forgetting things, that the person you worked so hard to become is somehow slipping away. Now, those are not small things. Those are real things, and they deserve a real conversation. So that is what we are going to have today. Now, welcome back to After Campus series, and this is episode 7 of After Campus series. And the previous episode, that is episode 6, we build the framework. Now, the 3-pillar approach to making the pre-internship period productive is what we covered during episode 6. We talked about the clinical pillar, the professional pillar, and the personal pillar. And I ended that episode by saying something important, that everything else we cover this week only works if you're okay. And today we make sure that you're okay, because this is not a productivity episode. This is a well-being episode, and I want to be upfront about what it is about and what it isn't. Now, this is not a clinical consultation, and I'm not your doctor or your therapist. And if you are in a place of serious distress, if what you are experiencing feels beyond difficult and into something darker, I want you to speak to a professional, not next week, but right now. And that is the most important thing I will say in this entire episode. Now, what this episode is an honest conversation. It's an honest conversation about the psychological landscape of the pre-internship period, what it does to people, why it does so, and the practical, concrete things that actually help. Not inspiration, but practical help. Let's get into it. I want to tell you about a conversation I had not long ago with a young graduate. I'll call him Theo. Now, Theo had just finished his final professional examinations, and he had done well, of course. His family was so proud of him, and by every external measure, Theo was exactly where he should be. But 3 months into the pre-internship period, Theo started experiencing something he didn't have words for. He would wake up in the morning with a heaviness in his chest. Not sadness exactly, more like dread, a low, persistent, unnamed dread. So he started avoiding phone calls, not because he didn't want to talk to people, but because every conversation eventually turned to the same question: when are you starting your internship? What are you doing right now? What's next for you? And he didn't have answers to those questions. And not having answers made him feel like he was failing, even though he wasn't failing. That was Theo. He stopped revising, of course, not because he forgot to, but because every time he opened a textbook, he felt a crushing wave of anxiety. What's the point of studying if I don't even have a placement? What if I've already forgotten too much? What if I'm not as good as I thought I was. Now, he told me that the hardest part was not being able to explain it to the people around him, because from the outside, his life looked fine. He was healthy, of course, he was educated, he was not in financial crisis. People keep telling me to enjoy the rest, he said, but I don't know how to enjoy something that feels like I'm disappearing. That's quite heavy. I've thought about that phrase many times since. Feels like I'm disappearing, that particular statement, because I think it captures something true about what this period does to people. When you remove the structure, the role, the identity, the purpose, the daily confirmation that you're someone, somewhere, doing something that matters, what is left can feel frightening. And for a profession that trains you to be strong, composed, and certain, that fright is one of the hardest things to admit. That fright is one of the hardest things to admit. Now, Theo is fine now, better than fine, actually. And he found his footing. He got his posting. Of course, he is a good clinician at the moment. But he told me that he wished desperately that someone had sat him down at the beginning of that period and said, what you're about to go through is hard. Here is what to expect, and here is what to do. Now, this episode is that conversation that you will have had but didn't have an opportunity to. And this episode is about that conversation that you should be having now that you have an opportunity. And I want to explain what is actually happening psychologically during the pre-internship period, because I believe that when you can name something, when you can understand the mechanism behind what you're feeling, it loses some of its power over you. It stops feeling like a personal failing and starts feeling like a human response to a genuinely difficult situation. Now, first, you are experiencing a major life transition. That has to be very clear. And transitions, even positive ones, are psychologically costly. Now, psychologists have studied this extensively. The end of a significant role, like a student in this case, triggers what is known as a transition crisis. You lose not just the role itself, but everything that came with it. Talk about the structure, the community, the daily sense of purpose and direction, the identity that comes with that, the feeling of being part of something. And all of that disappears at once. And the brain, which is fundamentally a pattern-seeking, stability-loving organ, does not handle that disappearance easily. Now, the anxiety, the low mood, the directionless many graduates feel in this period, these are not signs of weakness, but they are neurologically predictable responses to the sudden removal of structure and belonging. Secondly, is your sense of identity is under pressure. Now, we talked about this in episode 2, but it applies here with particular force. For 6 years, or however long your training was, your identity was organized around being a student, a role that came with clear expectations, clear feedback, clear progress markers, and now that role is gone. And the next role, that is being a clinician, practitioner, professional, has not yet begun. And you are in what psychologists call a liminal space, a threshold in between what you are and what you're becoming. That is a liminal space. And liminal spaces are deeply uncomfortable because human beings derive enormous psychological security from knowing who they are and where they belong. Now, take those anchors away, even temporarily, and the disorientation can be very profound. Thirdly, you are carrying unprocessed stress. Now, medical training is stressful, no lie about that, but stressful in the way people casually use that word. Genuinely, deeply, clinically stressful. Now, years of high-stakes examinations, sleep deprivation during clinical rotations, talk about exposure to suffering, loss, and death. pressure to perform constantly and without visible struggle. And throughout all of that, almost no space to actually process it because the culture doesn't allow it. You keep moving, you keep studying, you keep going, and then training ends. And the body and mind, finally given stillness, begin to process everything that was pushed aside during the years of pressure. And that processing can surface as anxiety, as low mood, as restlessness, as a pervasive sense that something is wrong, even when technically nothing is wrong. What is happening is not breakdown. That is not what is happening. It is release. Release is what is happening. It is the nervous system finally exhaling after years of holding its breath. And that is an expression that it needs space. It's not suppression. Now, fourth is chronic uncertainty, which takes a specific psychological toll. Now, the pre-internship period is defined by waiting for something you cannot control. The posting, the placement, the debt, the confirmation. That is the pre-internship period. And chronic uncertainty, the sustained not knowing of something that matters, is not the most psychologically taxing, is one of the most psychologically taxing states of a person can be in. Now, research consistently shows that uncertainty is often more stressful than a known bad outcome because the brain can adapt to what it knows. It cannot adapt to what it can't predict. And so the waiting, the daily, weeks-long, months-long waiting has a cumulative psychological cost that most graduates are completely unprepared for. Now, I want to draw a distinction that I think is important here. There is a range of difficult emotional experience in the pre-internship period that is normal. Now, normal, difficult, not comfortable, not pleasant, but within the expected range of human response to a genuinely hard situation. And then there is a range of experience that moves beyond normal difficult. Now, into territory that needs professional support. Knowing the difference really matters, and knowing when to take action really, really matters. Now, within the normal range, anxiety about the future will creep up, thinking frequently about when the posting will come, what the next steps are. Occasionally, you'll have low moods, that is days when things feel heavy and motivation is quite low. The days will be restless, that is difficulty settling, feeling like you should be doing more. There are days where you'll have mild social withdrawal, where you're spending more time alone than usual. Days where you'll be having difficulty in concentrating, where you'll be finding it hard to study or maintain focus, where you'll experience irritability, that is being more easily frustrated or reactive than normal. Now, these things are uncomfortable, but they are the expected emotional weather of a difficult transition. And they typically respond well to the practical strategies we are going to talk about. And I want you to pay attention now. When do you need to seek professional support? When do you need to seek professional support? You need to seek professional support when the low mood is persistent. That is lasting more than 2 weeks, not lifting. When you are losing interest in things that normally bring you pleasure. When you are sleeping significantly more than usual or significantly less. When you notice changes in your appetite that feel significant and sustained. When the anxiety is interfering with your ability to function day to day. When you're having thoughts of harming yourself, when you feel hopeless, not just uncertain, but genuinely hopeless about the future, when alcohol, substances, or other escapes are becoming a regular coping mechanism. And if any of those latter signs resonate with you, please do not minimize them. Please do not tell yourself to push through. Please do not wait for them to resolve on their own. You need to talk to someone. Could be a doctor, a counselor, a psychologist, a trusted mentor. Talk to them, give them a call, visit them, talk to them. The same training that taught you to refer a patient when a condition is beyond conservative management applies to yourself. At this point, you need to refer yourself. You will not tell a patient presenting with those symptoms to just wait it out. Do not tell yourself that either. Now, for those of you in the normal difficult range, and for all of us who want to protect our mental health proactively during this period, here are the things that actually help. Not platitudes, not just stay positive, but things that are evidence-based, practical, and specific to what you're going through. I want to talk about them. First is structure your days, and do so deliberately. Now, the most single powerful thing you can do for your psychological well-being during the pre-internship period is to create structure where the system has left none. Now, your brain does not function well in a vacuum. It needs anchors, a consistent work time, a rough shape to the day, designated time for the three pillars we talked about in the previous episode, the clinical, professional, and personal pillar. Not a rigid military schedule. Don't go that direction, but enough structure that each day has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that you can point to something at the close of it and say, I did that today. That small daily sense is more powerful for mental health than almost anything else. Secondly, protect your physical health like it is your job, because right now it is. Sleep, do so consistently and at regular hours. Move your body, of course, do that daily. Even a 30-minute walk would do. And eat, actually eat not perfectly, but regularly and with some care. Limit alcohol, and these are not just small things dressed up as advice. The relationship between physical health and mental health is so direct, so biological, so well evidenced that neglecting your body during a period of psychological stress is like trying to navigate a storm with a leaking boat. You cannot think your way to psychological stability if your nervous system is running on no sleep, poor nutrition, and no movement. The body is the foundation, and you need to protect it. Thirdly, stay connected and do so intentionally. Now, isolation is the companion of almost every mental health struggle, and the pre-internship period creates natural conditions for isolation. So you are no longer in the daily community of your training. Your peers are scattered. The social structure of campus or clinical school is gone. And if you are not deliberate about maintaining connection, the days can become very quiet, very solitary, in ways that compound every other difficulty. So be intentional about this. Be very intentional about this. Maintain at least 1 or 2 regular social connections, a study group, a weekly call with a friend, a peer community of other pre-interns, not because you need to talk about your feelings every day, but because human beings are wired for connection. And connection, even simple, everyday connection, is one of the most powerful buffers against psychological distress that exists. Fourth, limit your exposure to triggers that you cannot control. We talked in episode 5 about the comparison trap. And here I want to be even more specific. If scrolling through LinkedIn or Instagram consistently leaves you feeling worse, that is information. That is feedback that you need to act on. Act on it, set time limits, create distance from the feeds that function as anxiety triggers. And this is not avoidance. This is simply boundary setting. Now, the same way you would cancel a patient to avoid a non-allergen, cancel yourself to create some distance from things that reliably worsen your psychological state. Fifth, find meaning in something small every day. This one sounds soft. It is not. Now, Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that human beings can endure almost any difficulty as long as they can find meaning in it. And I think there is something in that for the pre-internship period. Not meaning in the waiting itself, but the waiting has because the waiting has no inherent meaning, but meaning in what you do within the waiting. Now, the patient you helped in a volunteer role, the concept you finally understood during revision, the person that you encouraged, the thing you created, the step forward, however small, that you made today. Find it every day. Name it. Write it down if it helps you. And because it is there, there's something you're doing that gives you meaning. Even on the difficult of days, it is there. Now, sixth, talk about it. I want you to talk about it. I keep coming back to this because in our culture, professional culture, that is African culture or healthcare culture, talking about struggle is quite difficult. It feels like weakness. It feels like ingratitude. It feels like giving ammunition to people who are waiting to say you couldn't handle it. But the research is unambiguous. Naming what you're experiencing to one trusted person reduces its psychological weight significantly. Not because the conversation fixes anything, but because secrets are heavy. And shared things are always lighter when carried. Compared to carried things, is always lighter. Shared things are always lighter. Now find one person, one trusted, safe person, and tell them the truth. That is enough to start with. And I want to say something that I think is rare in professional medical space. And I want to say it clearly so that you get it. I want to say it clearly so that you get it. You are not, or you are allowed to struggle. You are allowed to struggle. That is quite unconventional. You are allowed to find this hard. You are allowed to have days where you do not feel okay. And you're allowed to say so. Now, the culture of medicine teaches you very early that vulnerability is liability, that the professional thing to do with difficult emotions is to set them aside, to compartmentalize, to keep moving. And up to a point in a clinical emergency, in an acute situation, that skill has real value. But outside of those moments, that same habit becomes dangerous because emotions that are not consistently set aside do not disappear. They accumulate and they find their way out eventually. They find their way out through burnout, through breakdown, through a growing numbness to the work and the people in it. And I'm sure you've seen this. And I've had my own period of struggle. I will not pretend otherwise. Periods where the weight of uncertainty and expectation and comparison combined with the genuine difficulty of what we do as medics, as clinicians, as pharmacists, became more than I felt I could carry quietly. And the thing that helped most in those moments was never pushing through alone. It was reaching out. It was saying to someone I trusted, I'm not okay right now, and finding every single time that the response was not judgment. It was recognition. Me too. That was the response. I have been there before. You are not alone in this. There's a sense of peace that sets in when you know you're not alone in that journey, or your experience is not uniquely yours. Or whatever you're carrying right now, whether it is the weight of waiting or uncertainty or comparison or grief or fear, you are not the only one carrying it. There's a sense of peace that comes with that. And you do not have to carry it in silence, of course. You can share it. Now, that is episode 7 of After Campus series. And I want to close this one a little differently from what I've done before. Before anything else, if this episode landed hard, if something I said resonated in a way that felt significant, please reach out to someone today, not tomorrow. Today, I want you to reach out to someone today. Could be a friend, could be a mentor, it could be a professional. You know who that person is. Send them a message, make a call. Take care of yourself first. Please, take care of yourself first. Everything else we build in this series comes after that. For everyone else, 2 things that I'll ask of you to do. First, go to the comment section, and I want to create a space here. Describe one word that describes how you are actually feeling right now. Drop just that single word that describes how you're feeling actually right now. Not how you are supposed to be feeling, how you actually are. Because I think when we see each other's honest answers, we realize how much we have in common, and that matters. Secondly, it's about the next episode, which is episode 8. We are moving into something more practical and energizing. In episode 8, we are talking about how to keep your clinical skills sharp during the pre-internship period. The specific strategies, the free resources, the habits that will mean you walk into your internship feeling like a clinician, not like someone who used to be one. That episode drops tomorrow. Rest well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you then. This is Dr. Libea Bethwell, and this is After Campus series. See you.